Tus ojos como ríos son que van a parar al mar. Te fundes con mi cuerpo, amor, por toda la eternidad.
Good morning. One more time, good morning. Heck yeah. I am thrilled to be with each and every one of you humans today. We spent a lot of time planning for this event, and we never know who's going to show up. And I'm starting to see a little bit of standing room only. There's seats up the front. Come on in. We are lucky to have the best research humans in the world, from sites, sponsors, and CROs from 4 corners of the globe here in Atlanta, Georgia today. And I'm going to take the opportunity to welcome you, but also to pivot. Because for the last decade, Florence has focused on this notion of site digitization, or digitalization if you're the type of human that uses the word allergy. Site digitization has been our bread and butter. We want to help sites all over the world move from paper, closed shared drives that are provisioned by IT and manual processes to digital processes that are open to the whole ecosystem. And it's time for us to make a pivot. It's time for us to make a pivot right when we've reached new heights. As of today, we've now digitized 65,000 study sites around the world. That's it. That's cool as heck. We're giving back about 2.5 million hours of lost productivity to advancing cures to help your family and mine. And so that's very satisfying. So why pivot from site digitization at this moment when we've reached our peak, not only in terms of coverage, but also in terms of how the industry is recognizing the impact that we want to deliver. So those 65,000 study sites are supporting over 600 sponsors that are running studies across the Florence platform in 90 countries. And every time a sponsor releases Florence optionally to a site, our adoption rate reaches 70%. So 7 out of 10 sites say yes to adopting technology, even though in 2025, we're at a time when the technology options for sites are more crowded than ever before. And we feel very fortunate to be recognized for creating this scale through ease of use. That's what we try to build, and the 100+ Florentians that you see here in Atlanta today do every day when they wake up. And we feel lucky to be recognized by Gartner G2 for the 3rd year in a row as the #1 clinical research application as voted by users. And that's an awesome accomplishment. That's worth a round of applause too. So we're pivoting from site digitization right as our network reaches scale, and right as we have some of the greatest evidence for the economic impact that we're making for life science and for clinical trials. That economic impact can be measured in expedited startup, in reduced risk, and in increased capacity. And from an expedited startup standpoint, some of our thorniest studies, we've been able to reduce study startup by 70%, meaning taking it from months at some of the longer tooth academic medical centers to weeks. And for some of our customers, we've reached 51% improvements in the quality of the documentation for the entire study. That means taking the pass rate as documents flow back from sites into the eTMF from only 6 out of 10 documents to 9 out of 10 documents. That sort of 50% increase in throughput not only reduces the work that the teams have to do on the study, but also allows the assurance of approval when it comes time to inspect the documents by the agency to be much higher. But it's not all about speed and quality. We live in an era where study budgets are being more scrutinized than ever before. And as a result, it has to make dollars. And today, at the end of October 2025, we've now delivered $141 million of savings to all of our client customers. This is the last applause bit for now. Woo! So we feel lucky to earn our keep. So why are we pivoting now? If we're earning our keep now, if we've reached critical mass in terms of our footprint, we're pivoting because we believe we can do more together. And I want to let you in on the story of how we're going to be able to do more together in the second half of the 2020. That story starts with both ends of the clinical research spectrum. It starts both with sites and with sponsors, and it includes the work that these two sets of teams do. It includes the works that these two teams do. There we go. That is not only endpoint data, which is a lot of what we talk about in clinical research. When they took the pill, did the blood pressure go up or go down? But it turns out that endpoint data is a fraction of the data and the workflow energy that gets consumed during the production of a study. In fact, if you compare the volume of data in a TMF where all the documents are collected that prove the efficacy of that study to the volume in an EDC, it's about 20 times. And so while the EDC is the heart in carrying data from sites back to sponsors, everything else is the stuff that takes the most time and produces the highest volume of data. And it turns out that where the work lies. So as we pivot from site digitization to something more, we want to focus on helping where the work lies and where the work gets done. So why pivot now? What's missing? Well, we did some thinking across the course of this year, and we discovered that the most critical software applications in research had been built with a bias either for site value or a bias for sponsor value. So on the site value side, it's all the acronyms you'd expect that sites use. Yes, the EMR at the practice, but other things like IRB workflow solutions, site CTMSs, invoicing ERP solutions. And there's also been a cadre of applications built for the sponsor side of the business. EDC, ePro, eTMF, RBQM, those acronyms that you've come to know as well. But what is there where sites and sponsors can work together, where there isn't bias, where there's a notion of even-handed collaboration between these two key stakeholders in getting clinical research done and getting new drugs to patients? What's missing is a core tool set that not only creates visibility for both sides, but lets the work get done at the same place it gets consumed, eliminating double work between doing the work in one place and doing the work in some other place, allowing the creation and the consumption to happen in the same spot, and we're the right humans to do it. Florence is in a lucky place right now as we enter the second half of the 2020s, because it's the first time in history we have a mandate based on the size of our footprint at 65,000 study sites. And that's the shape of our curve. We have this nice linear up and to the right march, and so we're not letting up anytime soon. Yeah, we're pivoting from site digitization. It's because we have more to do. We've got this on rails. What's new now is the shape of this curve. Because of the size of our site footprint and some of the world's most important sponsors and CROs who have bet on us, the number of protocols in our tool is approaching 40,000 protocols. So we have the recipes and the mandates for 40,000 studies. And so we're starting to begin to help in an even way on the sponsor side as well. And so I'm pleased to announce the trial operations platform from Florence. This is the first solution that can cascade work from the beginning of the study life cycle to the end in a balanced way, answering that question mark statement. where's the infrastructure for shared work between sites and sponsors? And I'm going to invite a few folks onto stage in a minute to walk you through some of the first modules that are available for this platform. And in fact, every module you see on the slide is available today, but we're releasing a couple of them today in the 3 workflows, and I want to show them to you. First is a new site experience layer. So if you're a site that's accustomed to using our e-binders or e-consent solution, either because you acquired it to use across all your studies, or it was distributed to you by a sponsor or CRO, you're going to have a new way of interfacing with feasibility, e-binders, and e-consent. Second, we'll hear from a brand new team building site selection and site feasibility product. This takes the redundant work out of filling out yet another feasibility survey and uses AI to complete those surveys with a human in the loop. And lastly, you'll hear about a brand new sponsor experience, what we refer to as SiteLink 2, that manages study startup, doc exchange, and remote monitoring for sponsors so that they can help support workflows in a balanced, shared way with sites all over the world. We're going to show some real-time demos of these technologies, but before we do, I want to mention 2 things. One is, this is all in conjunction with an open ecosystem. You'll hear a little bit later from Anthony Costello of Medidata. You'll hear from Andy Corts of OneOncology about how an open ecosystem works in conjunction with some of these bubbles that I was putting up on the slides right here. An open ecosystem is important for how you get work done and how we can be your ally so that in supporting the tools that you've chosen already as best practice solutions. The other thing I want to do before we show some live demos is invite Chief Clinical Trial Officer Catherine Gregor to the stage to give you some context about what's going on in the market as we roll out the site operations platform. Round of applause for Catherine.
I always assume that round of applause is because I made it up the stairs without falling in these shoes. So thank you for supporting me in my decisions. So Ryan likes to bring me up here to give a little bit of color to the industry and talk about what's happening and why we feel that the solutions that we're developing are going to really fit with the needs of the industry today. Before I launch it, I want to take a second and give a quick shout out to our community. So Ryan showed a screenshot of our community of over 65,000 study site pairs. It's in this day, and they do a lot of extra work outside of their day-to-day patients. They do things to help advance the thought leadership. So I'd like to give a round of applause to the members of the Site Enablement League today. Thank you for your time. And additionally, we just launched our first user community. So our users are being branded together to talk and share best practices about how they can get better together. And I'd like to give a quick shout out to our user community ambassadors who are in the room today. So thank you for your time. Okay, now on to the heavy stuff. So usually I come up here and I start with a study or a story of doom and gloom. But today I get to start with the good news. Study starts are on the rise. Last year I stood up here and I talked about we were starting to see a downward trend in the number of studies starting in the market. This year we've seen that start to correct itself. Studies are increasingly starting at a faster pace, and we're seeing a higher volume of studies, which is indicative that the market is rebounding, which is great. It's great for us, it's great for patients. But as with most of my stats, there's a caveat. As we're starting to see the volume increase, the things that have always been there are also increasing, that friction, that inertia in the system. So we have increasing complexity. Protocols are becoming still increasingly complex as the therapies that we're developing are becoming more complex. That means that there's higher data points, more clinical burden, and it takes longer and more effort to get studies done. Additionally, we see an emphasis on broader site and participants. So we need to pick different sites. We know that now. We can't go to the same centers over and over and over again. So we have to find the right centers. We also have to find the right patients and make sure that our patients are representative, or our participants are representative of the patients that we intend to treat post-approval, which means that we need to take more time to think through who this participant mix is. And additionally, I don't know how many of you got really excited when you heard about ICH E6R3. Where are my reg nerds? Hands? Okay, seriously. That's fine. I'm the only reg nerd. I'll own it. This is a big hand down. It was adopted by the FDA, I believe, in September. So we are now working through it. And the biggest thing about ICH R6 is that it is putting an emphasis on data flow and technology and how those systems work together, because the agencies are recognizing that the future is going to be digital. And in order for us to make that happen, we have to be thoughtful about how we use those systems to set up and run our data. So we've got some complexity in the market, and this complexity leads to inertia. So we know that clinical trials, even though we work in a space that is constantly evolving, both in therapy and indication, we as an industry are some of the slowest people to change. But we're slow for a reason, right? We're usually trying to mitigate risk. We're trying to make sure that what we do is not going to jeopardize the true outcome of where we want to get to, which is drug approval. But because of that hesitancy, our ability to pivot is starting to be challenged. And it's being challenged at a time when change is happening faster. Technology is evolving, AI is evolving, science is evolving quicker than we're able to keep up with. And what that means is that even though we've seen an increase in study starts, we've also seen a slowdown in the time it takes to get those studies completed. Despite the massive advancement of technology in the last 10 years, we still see that studies are 30% slower than they were in 2015. Right? So we've thrown so many things in it that we can't move fast enough, and we're actually making our timelines longer. Additionally, we found that more studies fail due to execution error than to safety or efficacy issues. So this was a stat that was quoted by Dr. Califf at a city presentation earlier this year, that 30% of studies actually fail due to execution error versus 10% of safety and efficacy. So that means that we can't get timelines. We can't get studies done on time, or we